What's up, guys? It is Corey from Super Comic Guru 9000, and welcome to my review of Naruto Shippuden, episode 319. I honestly didn't expect any of this episode to be all about the backstory of Sasori and him making his very first human puppet, but you know what? I enjoyed it. I thought this was a really creepy-ass episode, especially in the middle, and then it somehow got kind of goofy and lighthearted towards the end, and I really didn't see that coming. But really, I thought this episode was going to delve a little bit more into Chiyo and her fight with Kankuro, and they do have a little bit of a fight in this episode, which is pretty decent, but it doesn't last as long. Really, the bulk of this episode is getting to learn about the backstory of Sasori, and before they get to that, you get to see that both Chiyo and Kimimaro, who was severely underused in this episode, get to go toe-to-toe with a bunch of the samurai and are just plain whipping their ass. Kankuro eventually arrives on the battlefield, and Chiyo notices that he is using the Sasori puppet, and then she starts to get all nostalgic, and she even starts to feel bad about the things that happened in the past. And that's when they segue into this flashback. And what I love about this flashback is it's actually stuff we've never seen of Sasori before. We've really only seen him as a young child, and we never really got to see the in-between moments. They do a short retread of his backstory a little bit, and then they jump a little bit forward, where you get to see that he's a little bit more of an experienced ninja, and he actually has his own workshop, which is pretty friggin' creepy, I'm not gonna lie. All the freaking puppet bodies hanging around all over the place. Puppets kind of creep me out, and I'm not quite sure why, but this whole room is just messed up, and this is when we're introduced to one of Sasori's only friends, which is Komushi, and he's a character, of course, who's never in the manga or anything, but he seems to be very close to Sasori, but Sasori doesn't really seem to be, giving any of that attention back to him. He's very cold and distant towards him, but no matter what, Komushi's very interested in what Sasori's doing. He wants to be a ninja just like him, and he's sort of the messenger for Chiyo, because Chiyo doesn't really know how to address Sasori at this point, because they've sort of had this like weird muddy period where, Sasori's just accepted the death of his parents, and Chiyo doesn't really know how to talk to him about that, so that's why Komushi is there. It's all a really, really big build-up. What I really love here, though, is eventually they get to this part where Komushi actually loses his arm in a battle, and he actually gets it replaced by one of Sasori's puppet arms, and this is awesome. He's actually able to move the fingers and everything, and even has a blade that can come out of the hand. He's the freaking full-wood alchemist. Chiyo seems really disturbed by this, and then things get even worse when we see that Komushi actually accidentally ingested some of Sasori's poison, and there's nothing she can do to stop it, and he dies. And there's this really messed up scene where Komushi's mother is begging Sasori to please heal her son just the way that he healed his arm, but nothing's going to come of this. But Sasori does actually have an alternate plan here. And that's sort of where the beginning of the episode came into play. There was this little part where Komushi's talking to Sasori, and he's showing him the arm for the first time, and he's like, "Whoa, that's really awesome. I can't believe you can do that. It's almost like a human's hand." And then that's when Komushi starts moving his hand just like that, and Sasori's watching this almost like, huh, that's what my next step needs to be, human bodies. And that scene is really, really creepy, and it led up all the way to this point where Chiyo pretty much figured out what Sasori's trying to do, and she went to his workshop, and she was accosted by a puppet, and it's actually Komushi's body. He comes out of the darkness, he actually has the blade in his arm still, and then Sasori walks up, and he mentions that he doesn't want to make anybody wait for this. So he did sort of heal Komushi in a way. He brought him back as a living puppet, and this is sort of where the dark period of Sasori really is going to begin. And then we go right back to the war, and I kind of wish they continued with more of the stuff here, because it was really interesting and really dark. And then Chiyo decides she's going to finally start fighting against Kankuro. And it's a huge build-up. She's actually able to control some of the dead samurai bodies. But Kankuro is able to get around those techniques, and he even goes a step further, not just using Sasori, but using the mother and father puppets of Sasori. And this sort of brings Chiyo to her knees, and she doesn't really know how to take it. And that's when she sort of has her moment, and she even does this funny thing where she collapses and kind of pretends faking dead like she used to do with her older brother. And Kankuro kind of does the same thing, and then she decides that she's going to try and pass down some of her techniques to Kankuro. And this is where the scene, completely goes crazy. It all of a sudden gets really, really goofy, and she just starts, attacking Kankuro, but it's in a really funny fashion. So all in all, I liked this episode. It was kind of out of place, though. I mean, this is, the backstory of Sasori after his second death, so it just seems kind of redundant in some senses, but damned if it wasn't done well. All of the animation and stuff was pretty decent this episode, and I really enjoyed that backstory of getting to see Sasori going through the motions of creating his very first human puppet, which creepily enough happened to be his one and only friend. and just the lead up to that was really big, and I liked it a lot. And there were a lot of really heartwarming moments, ironically, as well, especially towards the end when they show another backstory of Sasori and his family having their family portrait and is interrupted by Chiyo. It's both funny and heartwarming at the same time. And that's why manga readers are going to be kind of like, we know what happens to Chiyo, and it's not really that big of a deal what happens to her. You can kind of guess. But still, this was a pretty decent episode because I liked learning a little bit more about the backstory of Sasori. I think he's one of the darkest members of the original Akatsuki group, and this episode surprised me. It just felt really, really out of place. So, like I said, the animation was pretty good. The story was decent. It just sort of came out of nowhere. There were some moments I didn't really think needed to be there. The flashbacks of him with the mother and father puppets again, we've seen that. Little things like that. So I'm going to bump the episode down to an 8. It was still a pretty good filler, but maybe it would have held more water, back in the Sasori arc. But if you're a fan of the series, I still think you should check this episode out. It's still a pretty decent one. So that concludes this episode. How do you feel about it? You can let me know with your comments below. And you guys definitely know the drill by now. Before you leave, make sure and hit the like button so you can give this video a thumbs up. And make sure and check out some of our other video reviews. We just got done reviewing the 3rd Berserk film, Berserk The Golden Age Arc 3 Descent. Make sure and check out that video. Give it a thumbs up. And make sure and subscribe, guys. We'll see you next time, guys. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.